Hello, welcome to Confessions of a Frustrated Game Master. I am Robert, the narrator, and thank you for joining me for another episode. This episode is going to be a narrator review. Yes, I'm going to do my first review episode. I'm going to review a role-playing game that has recently released. I did a unboxing video for it a couple of episodes ago. It was the first role-playing game that I have ever supported on Kickstarter. So let's take a look at it. The first RPG that I have ever supported on Kickstarter and that I'm going to review today is Faith, the sci-fi role-playing game. Yes, the Kickstarter was approximately a year ago, and I am really happy for this game coming out, and really interested in it. And I'm running it right now. My Star Wars Edge of the Empire game came to an end, and I thought that in order to get some of the guys in my group who had kind of left the game because they didn't like Star Wars Edge of the Empire would come back if I gave this a try. So I've been running this for a couple of weeks now. It's been going fairly smooth. So yeah, let's talk about Faith, the sci-fi RPG. So what initially drew me to Fate, the sci-fi role-playing game? Well, I was over a year ago. I was just browsing through Google Plus, and I saw a post for the Kickstarter. And I don't want to give the person's name without their permission. I already sent them um, a message on Twitter thanking them for turning me on to Faith, but I just randomly saw their post on Google Plus. I went to the Kickstarter page and I was blown away by the art of the game. As you can tell, the art is really strong, and the third thing that drew me to Faith, as I've probably said in other episodes, I am a sucker for role-playing games that use cards for task resolution, and Faith is such a game. So the art, the cards, I read about what the setting was, and I was hooked and took part in the campaign. So that's what drew me to Faith. So now, what is Faith all about? Well, Faith, of course, is a sci-fi RPG that has gods in the world, and the game focuses on the struggle between two main alien races. Yes, it's a sci-fi RPG that has gods. The individuals in this world can worship particular gods. You can get abilities from the worship of particular gods, and you can also lose those abilities. But the main focus, again, is the struggle between two alien races, and the PCs can be thrust into this Cold War between these two alien races, one trying to expand, one trying to just maintain and survive under its enemies' vicious expansion into the galaxy. So that's really what the game is all about: struggling in this universe where the two most powerful species are clashing. So that's really what the game is all about, and it's really awesome. So the setting of Faith, I'll tell you about that now. So Faith's setting is more of a hard science fiction setting than anything else. There are no transporters. There's no faster than light travel. There are firearms that use bullets or physical ammunition. There are plasma weapons, in the game. So it is a sci-fi setting where you have vibro blades, you have high-tech body armor, you have hacking, and you do have space travel. But in this setting, because of the lack of faster than light travel, what you have is a web of wormholes that lead to thousands of different galaxies, and that is called the labyrinth. And in the game, the two main species, the Corvo, who are a technologically advanced species, and the Iskall, a species that is more concerned with protecting their community and making sure that everyone is provided and taken care of, have discovered the labyrinth and are now trying to expand their societies and explore, and trying to do so so that they can gain benefit and advantage on the other species. So the Corvo, as I said, is a heavily materialistic and capitalist society that is bent on gaining wealth and power and expanding aggressively into the galaxy. They discovered the labyrinth initially, and they take heavy advantage of it. And they're really great at hacking and interfacing with technology. Then you have the Iskall, which is more of a socialist society. Individuals are taken care of from birth to the grave. The society shares its resources, divides it evenly amongst all of its citizens, and makes sure that everyone has access to the resources so that they are taken care of. And initially, are not bent on expansion into the galaxy, but given the aggressive expansion and the aggressive nature of the Corvo, the Iskall have decided to participate and explore the labyrinth and expand, so they're not crushed under the weight of the Corvo. You also have a few other species in the game. You have humans, which, as sometimes we do in sci-fi settings, we have ruined the Earth. We have ruined our planet, and the Corvo have discovered humans and have basically not enslaved, but basically have turned humans into mercenaries for hire, because humans are larger, more physically powerful than the Corvo. Humans are really badasses in this world. So when the Corvo found them, they any human who was interested in entering a contract with the Corvo, they would take them into back into the labyrinth. They don't share, the Corvo don't share the coordinates of the Earth, and basically you are contracted to be a mercenary. Anyone who signs these contracts, any humans, are sterilized. They're kept in stasis for a long time, but at least they have the opportunity, even if they're in stasis, to make money from being a mercenary for hire, so they can support their family back on Earth, and so forth. So the humans are really the butt kickers of this world. So you have the Corvo, the Iskall, and the humans. Then you have the Rog. The Rog are also a very aggressive tribal species who travel the galaxy on asteroids that have had engines attached to them, that have ice fortresses attached to them, and the Rog conquer and plunder the galaxy. They are very warrior-like tribal species. They have engineers who are members of their society that are very familiar with technology, and they're revered because of their knowledge and expertise with technology, where most other members of the ROG society are not very tech savvy. And then the final race that you have in the setting is the Ravager. The Ravagers are completely alien. They attack, devour other species, absorb their DNA, and then take that DNA back to the queen of the Ravager hive so that it can be incorporated into the Ravagers so that they can disguise themselves as members of races that they have samples of DNA so they can infiltrate those races and improve themselves by absorbing the DNA of other species. So very deadly, very tricky, very dangerous species in the game. So those are the 5 species in the game. The 2 main species, Corvo and Iskall, are constantly battling. They're locked in a cold war. They do not openly participate in warfare because it would be very detrimental to both of their communities. So they're constantly poking at each other and working behind the scenes to undermine one another. And that is the type of setting that the characters are thrust into. So you can you can explore the labyrinth. You can delve into the politics and the back and forth of the major species in the game. You can come across the other minor species in the game. So there's a lot of opportunities for diving into this fairly rich setting that Faith provides you with. Now, that is the setting for Faith. Now let's talk a little bit about the system. As I mentioned before, task resolution with Faith is handled with cards. And this is the core box set right here for Faith. This retails, I got it from Kickstarter. I think it retails from somewhere in the neighborhood of $60 to $100. I'm not sure. I'll have the link to the website of the company that made Faith. They are a small independent Spanish gaming company called Burning Games. They're in Spain. And this is the core box set. Now, with the core box set, what you get is you get 4 player decks. Right here, you get 4 player decks, and these decks are basically poker decks. They are customized. They have beautiful illustrations. I'll show them to you in a moment. So you get 4 here. Each player, including the Game Master, needs a player deck. And if you don't have enough, you can always substitute with a regular poker deck, because that's basically what this is 54. These are 54 card poker decks with customized images and suits on them. I'll show you that soon. You have in the core set 1 gear deck. Yes, the gear that your players will have a card representing the gear, so they can know everything that the gear does, and then an NPC deck for the Game Master, so that he has easy access to what the NPCs can do. So in the core set, 4 player decks, gear deck, NPC deck, and you get the gorgeous core rule book that has all of the rules and the setting in it. It's fairly thin, not a huge, monstrous core rule book. And then you get 4 character boards. And this is where Faith's innovation really shines through. As you can tell, everything has been opened up because I've been playing for a couple of weeks. So I've opened everything up, put them in protective sleeves so they don't come like this. And you get 4 character boards. So obviously what you get is enough for 4 players, including the Game Master. So 3 players and the Game Master if you want. And what this unique character board is this is a replacement for the character sheet. So what you have here is you have 4 of these, and what comes in the box is more than 4 different character illustrations. I think you get about 2 or 3 male and female for each species in the game. There are 5 different alien species in the game, so you get 2 or 3 illustrations. You can choose an illustration, and what happens is these cardboard pieces can be customized and pop out of the character board. And then the game comes with tons of tokens, and the attributes and skills, they have numbered tokens that can be popped out of the board. When you create your character or when you're advancing your character, you can pop in new numbers. So you have your skills and your attributes. You have You have a symbol for whether or not you worship a god. You don't have to, but they have the symbol there. They have a blank symbol if you don't worship a god. You have your affinity. This relates to the 4 different suits in the game. I'll talk to you more about those later. And then you have your upgrades over here. You can have biological, technical, and God related upgrades, and you can, of course, these can be popped out. And in the game, they have boards that have all of the bio, all of the tech, and all of the god upgrades, so that when you are creating your character or updating your character with experience, you can go ahead and pop those in and out. So this is very, very, very innovative and very interesting. I mentioned on the Kickstarter comments page that Burning Games made a game that I didn't even know that I wanted. I didn't know that it would be awesome to have a character board, character illustrations that you can pop into it. And I didn't know they made a game that is so awesome. I didn't even know that I wanted to play this game. But I did, and because it's very innovative and very interesting. So you have your, that's what comes in the core set for about $60 to $100. Everything that you need for 4 players. The GM is considered a player to play 4 player decks, NPCs, a gear deck, and 4 character boards, and a ton of tokens, and the rule book. So the task resolution system is fairly simple. So I have, since I've been playing a while, I've already taken the player decks out of the verse 30 cardboard box that they give you, and I have put them in handy dandy Fantasy Flight clear standard sleeves to protect the cards. And these are these are player cards. And again, as you can see the beautiful, hopefully you can see the beautiful illustrations on the cards. They're not just a regular old poker deck. It is a poker deck as far as the numbers and the number of suits, but you get gorgeous illustrations instead of, you know, your standard poker deck. And as I said, you have a suit here, and you have a number on each of these cards. Now, the suits, instead of a poker deck, you know, diamonds, clubs, and so forth, you have 4 suits in faith, and what they are is nature, urban, space, and operating system. So as I showed you on the character board, there's a space where you can determine your character's affinity. And basically, characters have an affinity for operating or working in a particular area. So that's kind of the draw mechanic. You can draw when you play a card from your hand that matches your character's affinity. So if your character is, say, a pilot, you may have your character have an affinity for working in space. So when they play a card that has one of the space symbols on it, or the space suit, they can redraw. And so you have 4 suits, and the card, the suit, is right here. And you have a variety of different things here. So I'll show you what the task resolution system is like, what the task resolution system is. So everybody starts with a hand of 7 cards, unless you're playing a human. Then you start with 8. And the task resolution system is fairly simple. As you saw, you have 6 attributes in the game, everything from agility to dexterity to faith. And you have you have 12 skills, and the skills range anywhere from 1 to 9, 1 to 10, and the attributes range from 1 to 3. So what your attributes tell you is every round, your attributes, which range from 1 to 3, tell you how many cards you can play for that attribute. So if you have a 3 in agility, that means that you can only play 3 cards in any given round for agility. What your skill tells you, the skills range from 1 to 9, 1 to 10, what they tell you is what number you add to the value of the card that you play when you play a card. So I'll tell you how that works. Now, the core mechanic or task resolution system in Faith is very simple. Whenever a character wants to do an action, whether pilot a ship in a difficult storm or jump across an opening or climb a wall, all of the actions a character performs are automatically successful. So you say, hey, I want to climb this wall. No matter how difficult it is, your character is automatically successful. Unless someone who is being directly affected by your action, or the game master who is representing bad luck or some type of accident wants to confront your action. Okay? The only other than the game master, the only other individuals who can confront your action, which would normally be successful, is someone who's being directly affected by it. So if you wanted to shoot a weapon at someone, that person could confront your action. If they don't, the action is automatically successful and it achieves a level of success that you dictate. But let's say, no one likes getting shot. So let's say you're trying to fire at someone with your firearm and they want to dodge. So, or they can also fire back at you. You can determine how, when you're being affected by an action, how you respond. If someone's shooting at you, you can actually shoot at them with your weapon, and whoever is successful stops the other person from succeeding. But so in this case, what you would do is dexterity would be the attribute you would use. Ballistics would be the skill. So let's say you had a dexterity of 3. That means that in a single round, you can only play 3 cards for your dexterity. So essentially what happens is you take a card from your hand, you set it down face up, and you add its value to the value of the skill that you're using. So the skill adds its rating to the cards that you play. Your attribute determines how many cards you can play in a round. So let's say I have a ballistic skill of 5 and I play this 8 of space from my hand. So that would give me a 13 action value. And essentially what the idea is you take turn playing cards and adding it to your skill value. Highest action value wins. So whoever has the highest total, excuse me, their action is successful. Very simple. And so something that they made sure that they did with the game was to separate someone's ability to attack and individual's ability to dodge, because you have a dex skill and you have an agility skill. And why that's really important, as I said, can't emphasize it enough, your attributes tell you what your limit is, excuse me, on how many cards you can play. So if you use all your cards shooting at targets, if anybody's left, when they attack, normally you could shoot back at them to stop them from attacking you. But if you used all your dex cards, you have to come up with something else. So maybe you would want to use agility at that point. And then, of course, your agility attribute will tell you how many cards you can play for dodging and so forth. So I really like that. The other thing I like about that is I love games that separate, excuse me, dodging from attacking, because that means that your optimizers can't just put all of their points into one skill and be good at attacking and defense. They have to divide it. And it also, the mechanic of limiting you, so you have to come up with different ways of how to confront actions, makes the game really dynamic and fun. So that's the way that the game plays. As far as drawing, you only get to draw, as I said, if you play a card that has the suit that matches your character's affinity, you get to draw. If you play a card that matches your character's affinity and you're in that area, so where I played this 8 of space, if my character had an affinity for space and we were in a starship, I would get to draw 2 cards, take one of them, into my hand and either discard the other card or put it back on top of my deck. You also get to redraw when you play a card that has a value lower than the skill that you're currently using. So you automatically get to redraw. So that's a neat little mechanic. You running out of cards kind of represents you being exhausted whenever at the end of your turn or so, whenever you don't have any cards in your hand, you get to draw one card. So if you're not able to cycle through your cards, it kind of represents you being exhausted. You have physical damage and neural damage in the game. The game is fairly deadly. I would say that it is easy to get someone to a point where they wish they were dead, but it's hard to kill them. You definitely can mitigate your character being killed. It's pretty easy, I would say, to make your character wish they were dead, knocking them out of the combat, making them so ineffective that they wish they were dead. But it's hard to kill characters in this game, so it's kind of a give or take. The other thing that I like about the game, last thing I'll talk about as far as the system, is the character advancement, the experience point system. The experience point system in the game is very story driven. The way that you advance your 12 different skills in the game is at the end of every session or so, when you hit a milestone in your game, what the GM will do is they'll pick a PC. They'll go around the table picking one PC at a time. So you start with one and go to the next and go to the next. So you pick a PC and you ask the other players to describe a cool thing that PC did during the game. And essentially what the GM is looking for is the skill that the chosen player used most effectively. And he gets that from a vote of the other players in the game. And once you get that skill, the chosen player gets to up that skill, to increase it. And you go around the table and you do that for each player, and that's really awesome. Not only is it logical and it makes sense. It makes sense. The skill that you used is the skill that you get to increase, but it also, I think, if I'm playing a game and the other players in the game are asked, "Hey, what did you do that was awesome?" and people start describing it, it makes me feel like, makes me feel good. I think anyone will feel good that they feel appreciated. They felt like their character really took part and are really appreciated by the other players in the game. So it's a really logical, feel-good mechanic for the game. I really love that. The way that you increase your character's attributes and get other upgrades like biological, technological, or god upgrades to your character is you also, after you work with all of the other players to figure out what skill is going to increase that session, you can get 1 to 3 points to purchase attribute increases and upgrade increases for your character. So a really simple, really story-driven, really feel-good mechanic for experience points in the game. So that's a brief description of the task resolution system and the experience system for Faith. So now moving on to the overall nitty-gritty of appearance, organization, and my final review of Faith. So the art of Faith is really incredible. That's one of the things that really drew me to this game. All of my players who have seen the art for the game has said, "Man, that game is gorgeous." If you look through the rule book, almost every page has an amazing piece of art on it. So it really immerses you in the setting. And I have to admit, no matter how great a role-playing game setting is or a rule system, if it doesn't have great art, I have to admit it, I have a hard time getting into it. And that definitely is not a problem for Faith. As far as organization is concerned, the book is well organized. It starts you off with what all the components mean in the game, the core concepts of characters, game master, what sessions and scenes are, and then it gets into the cards, how you play the cards, what the suits mean, how you redraw, what the how confrontations work, and then it goes right into character creation, telling you about the different species in the games and the abilities that they get. Then it talks about skills, talks about the three different types of upgrades in the game, and then it goes into the equipment or the gear cards and the NPC cards, telling you how they work. Gives you a little bit of GMing advice, and then it goes right into the setting. So 50% of the book is mechanics. Almost 50% of the book is almost even split is setting. So as far as the organization of the book, I love it. The art, I love it. The organization of the of how the rule book is set up, I really like it. So what is my and also something else I'll say, all of the components and everything are really sturdy, high quality, thumbs up burning games. You really did a fantastic job with a great presentation and sturdy, high quality components. Congratulations, kudos on that. I have been carrying around my core box set, and it hasn't gotten dog-eared or beat up yet, because this is a really quality box here. So my overall review of Faith, I think the first thing that I'm going to say is Faith is a rules light game. What Burning Games wanted to do was they wanted to make a game that their friends who were a little shy about playing role-playing games would want to play. Their friends were really heavy board game players, so they wanted to give a game that had a lot of board game components, so that all of the rules could be on the table, and kind of made it more comfortable for their board game friends to want to play. But even though a lot of the rules are on the table and it's a rules light game, I think the game would be a little challenging for beginners. Several reasons I say that. Number one, there is not an adventure in the core box set at all. There's not an adventure. On Burning Games website, you can go and get an introductory adventure to the game, but there's nothing in the box. The setting information is really thorough and fairly immersive. And I think if you're experienced, you could put together a campaign that you could run for your players. But I think you have to be fairly experienced as a GM. You can't be a beginner. And most beginners may not be able to read the setting information and pull out a story from that. So I'll say that it's rough for beginners, even though it's a rules light game. It's really weird to say, but I think this rules light game can be a little difficult. Also, there is 2 pages of GM advice in this game, 2 pages. So that's another reason why I think the game could be a little rough for beginners. Now, the promise of not having the whole idea of having gear cards, having a character board, was that players and GMs would not have to go into the rule book. Now, this may be more of a nitpick, but they do have tokens that tell you what upgrades, biological, technical, or guard-based, that you have, but there's no space on this card to tell you what the ability does. Now, most of these upgrades are a sentence, 2 or 3 sentences, or really, really short paragraph. So they're not hard to remember, but until you memorize them, there's no way that on these awesome character boards, and I really do think they're awesome and innovative, that they don't have anywhere for you to have the information, even a brief description written down. Also, each alien species has their own abilities. Nowhere on the character board for that information to go. So you still either need to, until you learn the information, need to refer to the book or have extra stuff like a printout from the rule book or from one of the free PDFs online, or have the information written down on a separate sheet of paper. So the faith doesn't completely deliver on that promise. And the last thing that I will say in this overall section of my review is that I was able to immerse myself in the setting of faith. As I said, half of the book is setting material, but the writing is not the best writing that I've ever seen. There are some typos and errors in the writing, so it's really rough. So, or it's fairly rough, I'll say. So, if you're someone who can't get into a role playing game unless the writing is good to high quality, you may have a problem with faith. So I think that's the writing is not the best, and there definitely were some typos and so forth. So that's my overall feeling about the game. So what is my final narrator review for Faith the Sci-Fi RPG? So essentially, the way my reviews work is I have a rating that is equal to one of the polyhedral dice. So D4, D6, D8, D10, D12, D20. D20 being groundbreaking, earth-shattering game that everyone must own. D4 being don't worry about this game. Don't pick this game up, and everything else kind of falls in the middle of that. So I'm going to give Faith the Sci-Fi RPG a D10. So that means it's above average, but it's not the type of game that everyone should own. But it's a solid game. You definitely will not feel ripped off. It's high quality, but the writing is not that strong. And even though it's kind of weird, even though it's a rules like game, it may not be a game that I would just recommend for any GM, especially if you are a beginner. So that is my review of Faith the Sci-Fi RPG. Please leave some comments. Let me know what you think about my review, or if you're going to check out Faith. I recommend it for someone who has a certain level of experience, who is comfortable with maybe making up their own adventures until more material comes out. And thank you very much for joining me for this episode of Confessions of a Frustrated Game Master. Good morning or good evening, wherever you may be. Bye-bye.